Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Legendarium Green Team. I'm Cesky, and today I have with me BefuddledPanda.
Hello.
And Little Red Book.
Hello.
And today we are going to be conducting a little interview, and we are discussing his book that's coming out soon. This author is a great one. He's on the New York Times bestselling list with more than 30 award-winning books for children, teens, and adults. He's written the Unwind Dystology, the Skinjacker trilogy, Downsiders, the Challenger Deep series, the Arc of a Scythe trilogy, and he's won many awards for his well-written books. It is Neal Shusterman.
Hello. It's a pleasure to meet all of you.
Welcome.
Yes, welcome. It's so good to meet you. As a little bit of a get to know us, I've read your Scythe trilogy, the Arc of a Scythe trilogy. Gleanings is on my list to read. I really liked it a lot. I thought it was really fun. I'm about 80% of the way through this next book, The All Better Now, and it's really pulling me in there. So
I'm glad to hear it.
Kind of just get to know you. What made you want to go into writing?
You know, from the time that I was a kid, I always loved telling stories. And it was really when I was in high school that I had an English teacher that saw this love of writing and challenged me to write stories for extra credit. Mm-hmm. And since I needed extra credit in English, I took her up on the challenge. And by the end of 9th grade, I kind of felt like a writer, and I haven't stopped doing it ever since.
Wow.
Perfect. No, that's pretty amazing.
So was there a specific book that inspired you to write? Does that make sense? Or a specific, because telling stories, yes, but was there something that just kind of clicked with you when you were young?
Yeah, well, I remember, there's certain books that just really, really stuck with me. I mean, when I was in elementary school, it was Charlie and the Chocolate Factory.
Nice.
I remember, I saw the movie first, the original one, the one with Gene Wilder, not the creepy one with Johnny Depp, the original. And then the first thing I did is that I went out to read the book. And as I'm reading the book, something occurred to me in my 11-year-old brain. This didn't exist until Roald Dahl thought of it. The whole idea, the Oompa Loompas and the Chocolate Factory, none of this existed in our universe until he came up with it in his head. And now everybody knows it. It's a part of our world. And I remember thinking to myself, I want to be able to do that. I want to be able to create something that didn't exist until I thought of it. When I was in middle school, it was Lord of the Rings. And I remember I just fell in love with those books. And the idea that these books didn't feel like books, they felt like windows into a world that was larger than the pages of the books. And I remember saying to myself, I want to be able to do that. And so those are some of the books that made a difference for me when I was growing up.
I agree with you that really well-written books definitely can seem more like a window into another world than a book that you're actually reading. I like that feeling a lot. So
I do have to say, and this is definitely a tangent, the number of times that the Oompa Loompa song pops into my head just randomly. And that's the thing. Yes, I can only remember part of it, and it's the most catchy part.
Is that the part where they say their names over and over again?
Yes.
Because that's the only part that anybody ever remembers of that song.
It's very infectious, and yeah.
And there are so many instances in the world where it is just so appropriate.
Yes, I agree.
All right. Well, I guess let's get into our questions. We've got a couple for us.
So what we did was we basically put out a call to our community on our Discord server and just ask them like, hey, what questions do you have? It can be silly, it can be serious, anywhere in between. And we collected them all, and there are quite a few. So we'll see how many we can get through. But Cesky is going to spin a wheel that's going to tell us a number that corresponds with a question. And we don't know what the order is going to be. You have no idea what the questions are. But I promise we vetted them.
Yeah. Oh, we did. No worries. This one's from The Solution, and he asks, which one of your works, Neal, do you recommend for someone who is new and maybe not in the science fiction or fantasy, scene already?
I would suggest, if you're looking for a standalone, I would suggest either Dry, which is about the California drought and kind of what happens when the water runs out tomorrow morning. It's not like this future apocalyptic story. It's sort of, what happens in the first week when suddenly there's no water to 24 million people. I co-wrote that with my son, Jared. And I would also suggest Game Changer, which is sort of this alternate universe, a story about a kid who's a high school football player who tackles so hard that he bounces into alternate universes and has to deal with the sociological changes in the universes that he bounces into.
Wow.
That one does sound great.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
What a concept.
I love the idea.
I mean, speaking of like just dreaming things up and having the imagination to just think up just the most fantastical things.
Well, I mean, what gets me interested in this story is that concept. You know, there's so many things to explore when you come up with a concept that is fertile for the imagination like that. You know, and usually it starts with something a simple question like Scythe.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Scythe. People talk about Scythe being dystopian, but really it's not. I guess my whole point in Scythe was to break the genre of dystopia, because there were so many dystopian stories, and dystopian stories all have the same basic trope: the world has gone wrong, and it is up to the main characters, who are almost always teenagers, to fix the broken world that their parents have given up on.
Mm-hmm.
And that basically describes every dystopian story. And after seeing so many of them and it dominating the market, I thought, well, what if I did the opposite? Not a story about everything gone wrong. What are the consequences of everything going right? You know, what world do we end up with if we actually get the things we want? We defeat disease. We end war. There's no more racism. We live longer and healthier lives. And the more research I did, it led to all of these articles on life extension and how close we are to actually conquering death.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And I thought, what is that world like when we've conquered death?
Mm-hmm.
And so trying to look at it from the least dystopian way as possible, trying to look at the consequences of getting what we want, evolved into this whole world. And so that's kind of how I approach the stories. It always starts with a kernel of an idea that is fertile for expanding into an entire world.
No, that's great. I really like the way you describe how you came up with the idea for Scythe, because I can really see how that started and how that kind of took place throughout the series, showing that hope and that dystopian utopia kind of feel that it has.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, the hard part was trying to make decisions while writing that didn't lead it towards dystopia.
Yeah, I can see that would be really
the
easy.
Thunderhead. The Thunderhead is this the AI that basically takes care of the world.
Okay.
And everybody kept saying, when is the Thunderhead going to turn evil? They couldn't imagine an AI that doesn't turn evil.
Yeah.
And so I had to resist that. You know, the whole point behind the Thunderhead is that it will never be evil. It will never make a bad decision, and it will always have our best interests at heart. Even if we don't like the choices that it makes, it's making choices that are the best ones for it.
No, I love that.
I still find it creepy. I'm just saying it's a little creepy.
while we're talking about living forever here, our next question is, which sense would you give up for eternal life? Now, I'll let you think about it for a second. I'll start with Red over here. What sense would you give up for eternal life, Red?
Can't have touch because hearing.
Okay. Panda?
Why?
Oh,
Wait,
why? Yeah, why
I
hearing?
want to know why.
Because I still want to be able to see, and taste is so important to enjoying life. And although hearing is as well.
You know, that means no audiobooks, right?
I know. That's something I'm just going to have to start reading actual books again.
And no music.
You know, but that's okay. I'm going to live forever, so it's fine.
Panda, you ready?
Yeah, well, see, this person didn't really qualify their question. So I would say, like, sense of embarrassment. If I never have to feel embarrassed again.
Oh, yeah, I was going there too.
I would happily give that up.
Oh, that's funny. Neal, were you saying the same thing? Sense of embarrassment?
I was going to say sense of humor, but thinking about it, I don't know if I want to give up my sense
No,
of humor.
No, you can't give that up.
No. So I guess if I take the question at face value, it would probably be sense of taste.
Yeah.
Because most of taste is smell anyway.
That's a good point.
That's fair.
I would. If I get to go abstract, I'll lose my sense of style because I'm not stylish anyway. If I have to choose one of the five main senses, I'll go with taste as well because my sense of taste is already so trash already. It can't get any worse.
Panda.
Yes.
What would you lose? 5
You want me to
senses,
give
the
a
5
real
senses.
answer?
Yep, out of the 5.
I guess I would choose sense of taste, but I love eating.
That's
That
why
was really
lost
hard.
hearing. I'm willing to give up my audiobooks
You're
so
willing
that
to
I can
give it
taste
up.
things.
No.
All right. This question actually comes from Panda herself. If you could collaborate with any other writer, dead or alive, who would you pick and why?
Any other writer, dead or alive, who would I pick?
Yep.
I would have to say Stephen King.
Oh,
Ooh.
I like that.
Tell us more.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, growing up, I mean, I mentioned elementary school and middle school. High school, I was huge into Stephen King. I mean, I remember first Stephen King book I read was The Shining, and it was my first introduction to horror. I had to sleep with the lights on for weeks, and to this day, because I travel so much, I always get put in hotels. To this day, anytime they put me in room 217, I have to go into the bathroom and look in the bathtub to make sure the creepy dead old lady is not in the bathtub in room 217. But you know, I've always enjoyed the way he can keep you on the edge of your seat.
Mhm.
And something really exciting is that when Dry came out, he tweeted that everybody should read this book.
Oh, nice.
Stephen King
Awesome.
read a book that I wrote, and he tweeted about it. And if you look at
Congrats.
pictures of him sitting, in his library at home,
Uh-huh.
Dry is on the shelf behind him.
Oh my goodness.
So it's like, wow. So that's I would love to do that, to collaborate with Stephen King.
Well, that's amazing.
All right, you've put it out in the universe.
Yeah.
Come on, universe, make it happen.
Here's to hoping, right?
Yeah.
Where's Thunderhead when you need him?
Okay. Our next question comes from Kipton. What is the best type of point of view, and why is it from an AI perspective?
Oh no.
What is what is the best point of view?
Yeah, and why is it from an AI perspective?
I don't quite understand the question.
Like the person whose head you're viewing the novel from, why is it best from an AI instead of from a regular person? It's kind of how I took it to mean. Like, instead of having a main character follow or seeing the thoughts of a person, seeing the thoughts of an AI. Yeah.
Instead of like a male perspective or female perspective or a child.
So are we talking specifically about Thunderhead then?
Well, I don't know
No,
if he's read it or not, but that was his question.
Well, I mean, writing Thunderhead, the scenes that are from the Thunderhead's point of view was really fun to do, because the Thunderhead is basically kind of like, we've created this artificial god that is lonely because it's the only one of its kind. And it loves us, wants to help us, but can't save us from ourselves. And so it's suffering because it sees the suffering that we bring upon ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And so the writing from that point of view was really fun to do. The Thunderhead, I would have to say the Thunderhead is my favorite character to write.
Really?
Oh, very nice.
Wow.
So you actually agree with Kip.
The rest of the panelists, do you guys have any thoughts on that?
It's a tough one since I'm not a writer, and when I do write, it's not well. But
Well, but what do you enjoy reading?
I like any point of view I can kind of relate with. That's the best one. So
Yeah. I think AI is fun to explore because really, what are the limitations? You can explain away any limitation, but I think the same thing with like fantastical creatures. Although I was thinking fairies. Fairies would be fun to write from their perspective, but they do have quite a few quirks and rules that they follow, especially if you're going with like traditional fairies. Whereas like AI, it's honestly anything's fair game.
I like it. All right. Let's see the next one. Lady Sweden asks, what is a trend you are hoping for in the future of science fiction and fantasy? Or is there one that you kind of think is missing, hasn't been utilized as well?
In terms of trends, the trick is trying to figure out what the trend is going to be, but also trying to not write to the trend.
Right.
When I was talking about Scythe, I was trying to go against the trend. So that's kind of like where I live is I look at what the tropes are, what the trends are, and then try to do the opposite. I've always been kind of contrary, and so I'm always trying to do what is not being done, or what they say that you can't do. If someone says, "Oh, you can't do that," that immediately makes me want to do it.
What are some of the trends you see in like YA like science fiction and fantasy where you're like, I want to write the opposite of like current day?
It's hard to say specifically off the top of my head. It's like when I get there, when I kind of come up with the idea, I say, oh, that is just that's going to break the genre, or that's going to do the opposite of what everybody is expecting. But I can't. But thinking specifically, it's hard to say.
Okay.
It's like it's on a case by case basis.
Yeah.
I mean, can we expect a romantasy book from Neal Shusterman? I'm just kidding.
If I were to do a romantasy book, I would have to figure out a way to make it so unromantasy. like people kept asking me if I was going to write a vampire book when Twilight was big. So here was my idea for a vampire book.
I'm loving it.
It was a story about a vampire who's was going out and killing only authors of vampire books.
A book I didn't know I needed.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Okay. I mean, now you have a challenge.
Yeah, right. Find the romantasy. Yeah.
Like, go write a romantasy book that's so not romantic, but still qualifies.
Preferably with a vampire that's killing vampire authors.
Yes, incorporate it all.
That is a good way to go. All right. Our next question comes from Kipton. If we had to give up breakfast foods, reading, or air travel, which would you lose? I can answer this one easily. I would lose air travel because I don't travel by air enough to make it worth it to save the other two. Depending on how you define breakfast foods, maybe I'd give that one up, but definitely not reading. So who's ready with an answer here for this one?
I would say the same. I would give up air travel.
Give up air travel.
I still have a car and there's still boats. But breakfast food. Like, I can't imagine my life without bacon. Like, that sounds terrible.
Well, see, I'm the opposite. I would give up breakfast food in an instant because I'm not a breakfast guy. It's like I hate those restaurants that say breakfast served all day. I don't want breakfast served all day. I want dinner served all day.
Oh, interesting. What would be like a dish that you could eat like over and over again?
Over and over again. What dish could I eat over and over again?
Mm-hmm.
What's your favorite dinner dish?
Anything Asian. I love Asian food. I love gyoza.
Oh yeah.
Sushi. My favorite restaurant is Din Tai Fung, if you've ever heard of that.
Oh my goodness. Yes.
Yeah, if you know, you know.
If you know,
you know. Yeah, they just opened one in New York City not too long ago, and that's like the first one on the East Coast. Because all the other ones
aren't that many of them, and there's like a 2-hour wait to get in. They don't take reservations, and it's worth every minute of waiting.
That's a strong recommendation.
Just done an advertisement for Din Tai Fung.
Yes. Hey, if you guys could give us a sponsorship, we'll talk about it all day, every day, right?
Well, since we're talking about Din Tai Fung, I love the beef noodle soup because so I'm Taiwanese. And it's like the closest that I found in the U.S. to what I would get back in Taiwan. And I mean, it kind of makes sense because Din Tai Fung originated in Taiwan.
I went there.
Yeah?
I was in Taiwan last year, and I got to go with a bunch of teachers from from the Taipei American School.
Oh my gosh!
And we went to Din Tai Fung, the original one.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
Amazing. That's awesome. Hopefully, you didn't go when there was the giant earthquake.
No. It was before the earthquake.
Okay, good.
What about you, Panda?
See, I really like reading on the plane because it's like this, to me, it's like this really dedicated time where it's like, yes, I could watch a movie, but I'm like, but there's no other distraction. So I should just read or sleep. And I do really like breakfast foods, but I do like savory foods in general, not so much like, French toast or waffles or anything. So I could give up those like traditional American breakfast foods. So I'll say that.
Okay.
You were talking about reading on a plane. I love riding on planes.
Oh, yeah?
for some reason, moving vehicles, except for cars, because riding in a car,
that's just miserable.
Can't do that. Especially if you're driving. That's not a good thing.
Please don't.
Texting and driving is bad enough. We don't need writing and driving at the same time.
But being on a plane or a train, I seem to get so much creativity, so much work done when in motion. But my favorite place to write is on cruise ships.
I mean, who doesn't like a cruise ship?
I mean, you don't have to worry about, your meals or anything.
Mm-hmm.
Like that would actually be a good writing retreat.
I've done that many times, and I've turned on other authors to it. So I'll go with other authors, and we'll just go on a cruise and hang out and write. And
oh wow,
I get more work done than I would if I were staying home. So
that's
it makes
amazing.
it worth it. And tax deductible.
And tax deductible.
Now that is,
and that's the best part.
The singular best vacation I ever had in my life was on a cruise ship. And what's nice about it is we took all the kids and we could hang out together, or we could go do our own thing, or we could hang out together at dinner, or then we could, we did the Alaska cruise. You could go visit the stops and all that kind of stuff. And you never had to move out of your room for a week. It was great.
Yeah.
Your hotel travels with you. That's
right.
Yeah.
This next question is one of mine, but what's your favorite part of the writing process? Is it coming up with new ideas and brainstorming? Is it the actual writing? Is it working with your editor, like publication day? Like, what's your favorite part?
My favorite part are 2 words: the end. Knowing that you've gone through that process, people talk about me being prolific, and it almost makes me laugh when they say that, because while I'm writing, it doesn't feel like anything's getting done. It doesn't. It feels like it takes forever. And then I get to that point where I'm at the end, and I wrote those 2 words, and suddenly I have like 400 pages, and I look at it and say, "How did that happen?" But seriously though, my favorite parts is the beginning and the climax of the story, of course. But I would have to say, in the writing process, it's the discoveries along the way.
Okay.
It's those things you didn't think about that were there, and you just discover them. And it's just so exciting to find things out about your own story that you didn't even realize were there while you're writing it. And it's just very exciting when that happens.
So do you outline?
I do have an outline, but my outline is just a trick. It's a psychological trick to get me writing. Because I want to know that I know where it's going to start, I know where it's going to end, I know all the things are going to happen in the middle, and then I start writing, and maybe by around 50, the characters start to come to life and feel like real people, and they do not want to do what I wanted them to do. They don't behave. They want to go and do their own thing. And so at that point, I throw away my outline, see the decisions and choices that the characters are making, and then once I see what they're doing, then I'll restructure it and re-outline based on the choices that they're making. And that happens multiple times through the writing process. So the story is always changing. It usually goes where I think it's going to go, but the path to getting there is never the path that I predicted.
I hear that from quite a few authors. It's like the characters tell them, as when they start to explore, the characters really tell them where the story is going to go or how certain things will play out. And for me, where like I'm not really a writer, it's like a bit challenging for me to understand like what that means or how that feels. Do you have like, and this might be a little too spoilery, but if you have like a bit of non-spoilery kind of examples of where you had originally thought a character was going to go a certain way, but ended up doing something different?
In Unwind, there was the moment that I realized that, I had set something up in the story that was really a solution to a problem. The main characters were trapped. They were at a high school. They were hiding out. There were police that were coming. They had to figure out a way to escape. And so I thought, well, what if they try to create some sort of panic? They call in a bomb threat or something like that. Well, but this is in the future. What would a futuristic bombers look like? Or what if bombers are not? They don't have bombs strapped to them. What if they are the bomb? What if they just they detonate by clapping their hands?
Oh wow!
And so anyone standing in the middle of this school starts clapping. People panic because they say there's clappers. They're gonna explode, and so it creates this panic. It solved the problem. And I thought that was it. And then later in the story, one of the characters, who is the one who is the most innocent, who is the one who was the most sheltered, snaps. The character of Lev. And the moment that happens, it occurred to me, my God, Lev is going to become a clapper.
Oh.
He is going to sink into this world. And the question is, at the end of the story, is he going to do it? Is he going to clap and detonate? And that was a complete surprise. What began as a solution to a problem ended up becoming a key part of the story.
I see.
Yeah.
I see.
I like that. That's
Okay.
a very interesting to learn about that. Yeah.
You definitely write about some really dark stuff.
I do. I mean, I try to put humor in there as well, and when I do write about dark stuff, I try to make it poignant and powerful without making it in any way exploitative. I mean, it's like the unwinding scene. The unwinding scene in Unwind. I mean, the basic premise is that teens can be used for their body parts, but the rule is 100% of you must be used. And it poses the question: if 100% of you is alive, but now part of different people, are you alive? And then there is a scene towards the end where a character is actually put through this process. It could have been gross. It could have been gory. It could have been bloody. I went the opposite direction. It's all psychological. You don't see what's going on. There is no blood whatsoever. There's a nurse who is holding the character's hand, calming them, painless because they're anesthetized. And so I sort of tried to take away the aspects of that horror that were horror. And what ended up happening is it makes it more disturbing because it is all focused on the psychological.
Yeah.
No, I definitely have to agree with you do write dark things, but you do write them in a very good way, that they're not dark, scary, but they are like very contemplative things to think about and to like you said with the Unwind, like if I'm all in use and everything's alive, am I still alive? This is a question from Mirlia, who's a kind of similar topic here. But she says that your works have some distinct commentary on people in positions of power and the way it's handled by different individuals, but also that decisions that are made by individuals, having large impacts on the world. And as your books are generally targeted at a little bit of a younger audience, your teens or young adults, have you found your intended messages to be appropriately received? Do you feel like you're making an impact with these kind of statements that you're putting out there that I think are great? How do you feel about that?
I think they are. I mean, I try not to make statements, and I try not to put messages in the stories because to first of all, if you think the moment that you think you know the answer to the hard questions, that's the moment that you become part of the problem. I think that the questions are hard for a reason, and I think the best that we can do is find different ways of looking at those questions, or finding the questions to ask to begin with. And for me, it's about asking those questions and then letting those questions ruminate and let people think about them. I don't want to give you an answer because I don't know the answer. Unwind. If we are divided, where is our consciousness? If we're still physically alive but in different places, I don't have an answer to that. But I think it's a question worth asking: the nature of consciousness. And looking at it in a way that has not been looked at before. So I'm always trying to come up with the good questions.
I like
and
that.
Those questions hopefully transcend the genre of young adult. I love it when I was just before getting on this podcast, I happened to go to Goodreads. By the way, if you've posted reviews on Goodreads, the authors have probably seen it. I know there are some authors who won't look, or at least they say they won't.
Yeah.
But I go on there and I look at what people are saying, and I look at the 5-star reviews to boost my ego, and then I go find that one star.
Oh.
that I am now obsessed with. Why did they give that 1 star? But I was just looking at reviews for All Better Now, and consistently what people were saying is that this is marketed as young adult, but this is a book for everybody.
Oh yeah.
Oh great.
And that's what I like to hear, because that's what I mean. I want it to be appropriate for teenagers, but I also want it to be stories that resonate regardless of what your age is.
To me, that's like a perfect book. As an adult, I mean, I was a big reader growing up, so, read all kinds of things. And as an adult, I do still like going back to read middle grade, to read kids' literature, YA, because typically they categorize that because the main character, the perspectives are of a younger age. But that's not to say that, whatever they're going through isn't relatable to an adult, especially because a lot of times we've gone through something similar and now we have a different perspective because we have experience beyond that, and we can have a different reading experience from an adult's eyes. And so I think that's really, really powerful when you have like a middle grade, a YA that can land with readers of all ages.
I would say that is the measure of a good book.
Yeah.
Like if an adult can't read the book or does not find it enjoyable, like something like Where the Wild Things Are, it still is so good. And if you can't love the book, it probably isn't a good book. I love it as an adult. And just like we did Ella Enchanted for our podcast, and I had never read it. And Panda spent like 2 years trying to talk me into reading it. And I read it and I was like, where has this book been my whole life? It was so amazing. Like, it was so good. And it's technically a middle reader, I think, isn't it? Or is it yeah.
It's middle grade. So yeah, we talk about how books can have like age floors, but really good books don't have age ceilings.
That's a good way of putting it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because some books are either, or too difficult, both conceptually and subject matter for younger kids. But so there is a floor there. But for stories that can appeal to teenagers and appeal to adults as well, that's the goal that I try to achieve when I write.
I think it's apparent that you have those big questions are there, and that they're there to think about. Whether you're young and you have one perspective, you're older have a different perspective. But the questions are there and good. So
just real quick, I want to say that at least for readers like us, where it's not that we just like reading, but we also like discussing what we're reading, and hence why we have this podcast. It's those books. I mean, we do like to read fluff and discuss that too. But a lot of the times we really enjoy the books where the questions are asked, and that gets us thinking, and that gets us communicating with each other, sharing ideas, sharing perspectives. So thank you for writing those kinds.
And you're welcome. And I love to hear that. You know what my favorite comment they ever got was?
I'd love to hear it.
From a parent come up to me and said, my kid read Unwind and forced me to read it. Because he wanted to talk to me about it. And so I read the book and we had this discussion. And the parent said to me, I never knew my kid thought so deeply.
Oh,
that's so nice.
And that is just such a wonderful, wonderful thing to hear.
Yeah, you got to frame that. Frame that. Put it on your wall. Always remember it.
It's good. No. So, a little bit of a lighter question here. Comes from Panda and Lady S's. How many owned unread books is too many? Or how many shelves of unread books is too many? I can say that there is no limit to the number of unread books that you can own, nor shelves to hold them, aside from space that you have access to.
I have shelves in both halves of the country, in California and here, that are full of books that I will never admit that I'm never going to read all of them. There's going to come that moment where I look at those shelves and say to myself, I will not live long enough to read all of these books, but I'm not there yet.
No.
I still wish to believe in my heart of hearts that every single one of them will get read, except for maybe Infinite Jest, because I don't think I'll ever be able to.
And let me just tell you something, Neal, as somebody who's read it, you should not waste your time with that book. I'm putting it out there into the world that if you go into your grave saying, I didn't read Infinite Jest, that is no love lost on either part. Trust me. Do not subject yourself to it. But keep that hope alive. The other hope is good. Keep that other one alive. But Infinite Jest, you just let that sit on the shelf and look nice.
The funny thing is that our podcast has actually covered Infinite Jest.
We did. It was, if you want to
And Cesky was part of that, and he has trauma.
I have trauma from that. Yeah, I'm gonna stop talking about it a little bit, but it's yeah, it was
bring back a little PTSD for you.
That's right. It was an experience.
I've gotten to the point I'm trying to downsize because I'm thinking about moving, and I've gotten rid of a lot of books that I haven't read, but I comfort myself in that I can always get them on Kindle, probably, right?
Or the library.
Space I'm going to be moving into is much smaller than the space I have now, and so I just have to divest myself of some of these physical books.
The library is a great thing.
Yes.
I myself, I know there have been like studies done, and people have put out like, headlines about how like having an unread library isn't necessarily a bad thing. It is more about like, oh, there are so many possibilities. I mean, the optimistic way of looking at it is look at all the possibilities that are there.
Look at Infinite Jest. It's right there.
No.
Yeah, not that one.
Don't look at it, I promise.
The frustrating part are the ones that I start that I don't finish, but I want to finish, but then it goes so long that if I'm going to read it, I have to start from the beginning again.
Yes.
I've been there.
And so there are all of those books that I've gotten partway through that I really want to finish, but I don't care enough about to go back to the beginning.
Yeah. The internet's a great place. I bet somebody has written a summary or like done a video to catch you up.
Yeah.
This is my book.
Oh my gosh, I was just about to say House of Leaves. That is really freaking me out. That was my next line. I was going to say I'm started House of Leaves, and now I have to go back to. I got like 50 pages into it. Now I have to go back to the beginning because
I don't even know if I want to though, because it's like it's very cool visually, but it's about a descent into madness, which is something that really bothers me.
Oh, okay.
That's why Breaking Bad was a descent into evil, and I watched the first 3 episodes, and I'm like, I can't watch this guy do what he's going to do to his life. So that's kind of how I feel about House of Leaves. But I would also like to finish it.
That's fair.
Maybe.
I don't know.
there are 3 books on my nightstand: House of Leaves, Starter Villain.
Oh, I like that. Yeah.
Oh, I love Starter Villain.
And The Last Chairlift, which is John Irving.
Okay.
Which I've been having trouble getting into. It's usually I like his stuff, but it's a harder one to warm up to. But those are the 3 books that are on my nightstand right now.
I love Starter Villain.
Yeah.
Of the 3 that you listed, I think Starter Villain would be the lightest read.
It is, and that's the one that I will finish. Finish first.
And the shortest, probably.
Yeah.
But if you ever want a community to read House of Leaves with, we raise our hands.
So you raise your hands. I'm keeping mine firmly down this time.
We've been meaning to cover it on this podcast for years.
Kip tried to talk me into reading it, and I was like, sure, I'll read it. I'll podcast about it. And then
years later,
I got about 100 pages in, and I was like, I can't. I don't know that I can do this. I got distracted by other things.
I think this might be one of our last questions, but what method of storytelling would you like to delve into that's separate from your current work? Comics, animation, tabletop games. Any thoughts on that?
All of the above. I love trying to do new things. I mean, I did a graphic novel, Courage to Dream, which that was a case in point of you can't do that. Okay, let's see if I can. Because it's 5 stories that take place during the Holocaust, but they're fantasy stories. And the idea of juxtaposing the Holocaust with fantasy and making it poignant and powerful was a challenge. And I really enjoyed doing it. I think, and the book has done well. It won a Sidney Taylor honor. That was my first attempt at a graphic novel. I've actually done games. Have any of you ever played How to Host a Murder?
No.
I've seen it around, but yeah.
Yeah, they are basically murder mystery dinner parties in a box. And I worked for the company Decipher, and I wrote 10 of them.
Oh, wow.
Nice.
That's awesome.
And this was back, 15 years ago, 20 years ago. But they've actually come back to me and asked if I would write some new ones for them. So I'm very excited about doing that.
That's awesome.
I would love to create or be involved in the creation of a computer or video game. That opportunity hasn't presented itself yet, but I would love to. I'd love to create an open world game.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
Like the new Zelda games, like Breath of the Wild or Tears of the Kingdom. Is that what it was called?
Tears of the Kingdom's number 2. Yeah.
Yeah, I would love to be involved in creating something like that.
That would be amazing.
It would be cool if I could create one based on one of the world book, one of the book series that I've done.
Yeah.
The difficult part of that is that when they get optioned for film and TV, the game rights go with that, and so I no longer have the option to do that.
Oh, I see. I didn't know that those went with those like that. So,
kind of a follow-up question then is, which of your written works would you most want to see adapted, whether film, TV, musical, play?
Don't laugh. I actually have written a musical.
No, really?
Lovely.
That's cool.
It hasn't been produced, but it's there.
It's there.
Someday. It's on my bucket list to actually get it produced.
Nice.
It would be a toss-up between Scythe, which is actually in development right now with Peacock and as a TV series, and Challenger Deep, which is about schizophrenia. Was inspired by one of my son's experiences with schizophrenia when he was a teenager, and so it's very close to my heart. And so, but for Challenger Deep, that's one that it needs to be done right,
right? Yeah,
because it is such a personal story.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's amazing. It's every time I talk with authors, I always just come away with this long list of their books that I haven't read yet that just move up my list higher and higher. And it's a personal problem, but it's a good personal problem to have.
I mean, it's certainly a better addiction than something like, fentanyl or something.
Yes, that is true.
I certainly hope that reading is a better addiction than fentanyl or other things. I think we've hit on all of our main questions here. Let's talk about your new book. It's releasing in less than a week on February 4th.
Yes, on Tuesday.
Yay.
I just want to give a little quick rundown, your little promo press about it. It's about a deadly and unprecedented virus called Crown Royale is spreading. But those who survive it experience long-term effects no one's ever seen before. Utter contentment. Soon after infection, people find the stress, depression, greed, and other negative feelings that are used to weigh them down are gone. But not everyone is reveling in this mass unburdening. People in power depend on malcontents, prey on their insecurities to sell products, convince others that you need new and better and faster. Campaigns start up to convince people that being eternally happy is dangerous. The race to a vaccine begins while recoveries plan ways to spread the virus as fast as they can. 3 teens from different backgrounds have their lives upended in different ways, find themselves at the center of a power play that could change humanity forever. And then I like this question that you put. If happiness were literally a virus, would we want to catch it? And man, when I'm in this book, I feel like my opinion changes every page of whether I'm like,
as it should.
Yeah, spread that virus. And then I'm like, no, wait. No, don't spread that virus. Nope, spread it. I'm like, would I want it? Would I not? I have a hard time saying yes or no on it. I think for the most part, I personally would fall on, no, I don't want the virus to not force, but to help me be happy. I'm generally happy on my own already. So for me, it's kind of an okay. It's another way, but Panda, you're here. Would you take the virus? Would you get sick to get happy?
Honestly, I cannot answer that right now, but I am curious. I am curious, Neal, because and this book now makes a lot of sense based on what you were saying before, that you're more of like a contrarian. You see the trends and you're like, I want to do the opposite. And there are quite a few pandemic related books, and you gave it a twist. The virus, the outcome is contentment. And so can you tell us a bit more of your thinking process how did you decide on this particular outcome for the book?
Well, it started, I was actually at a bookstore doing a presentation, and someone had commented how my books are prophetic. How Unwind, predicted how the reproductive rights would just spin out of control and would metastasize into this issue that just wouldn't go away and would just keep getting worse. How Dry kind of predicted what our behavior would be like during the pandemic, and and predicted the California drought, and not so much the drought because we already knew about it, but how people would react to it.
Mm-hmm.
And then Scythe, the Thunderhead, how the AI that we're seeing sounds so much like the Thunderhead. And so somebody else in the audience in the back shouted out, "Why don't you just predict something happy?" And so that night I couldn't sleep. A lot of my stories start with a sleepless night. And I thought, well, what could I predict that's happy? Well, how about, we were just coming out of, the pandemic. What about another pandemic, but a pandemic of joy? A pandemic that leaves everybody who comes out of it in this state of utter contentment for the rest of their lives. Would you want to catch a virus that leaves you content? And so, I thought there's three schools of thought there. I mean, one is, yes, this is the next evolution of our species. We need to overcome the darkness. We need to overcome the hatred and the fear and all of the things all the negative parts of human nature that keep us down. So there's people who want to spread it, but then there's people who are afraid of that. Who thrive on ambition and other people's fear and gain their power through anger. They're the ones who would not want that to happen. And then there's people who would sort of see the positive of it, but worry that the consequences aren't worth it, and then grapple with that. And so I wanted to show those three perspectives. And so there's three characters who kind of represent those perspectives, and just throwing them together in this mix of this bizarre pandemic of joy was really a trip to write. It was fun to write, and it was all about posing those questions and looking at those questions from all different perspectives, trying not to discount anybody's perspective.
Yeah.
I mean, usually if people would ask me what my point of view was on it, I would sit back and smile and grin and not say anything. But in this instance, I have to be honest and say that I would spread it.
All right.
I would be a spreader, because
that will not be taken out of context.
I think we've had enough hatred, and we've had enough darkness, and we've had enough misery. I want to be part of a species that can't even remember what hatred and anger and misery is.
That would be quite something. I really like in the story as I've been reading it that you didn't take what I would consider like the lazy way out with the contents or the people who've gotten it and gotten better, that they're so content they don't want to do anything. They still want to live their life. They still want to do what they do. They're just happier about it. They're just content, and I like that about that. That's a high mark in my mind, that it wasn't just you get content and you just don't want to do anything. Now, maybe somebody who was like that before they got it is still like that, but
Well, that is, as you said, that would be the lazy way out. But then that would be a negative. That would be too negative. And something that I thought, would people just not go anywhere? Would they just sit and be content? And I thought, well, who doesn't go anywhere? Who stays in the same place? People who are afraid. People who won't get out of their comfort zone. So it's really the opposite. The people who are content and happy, they would be the ones willing to go and travel the world and experience new things, because suddenly their comfort zone is extended to include the entire world. So it's kind of the opposite of what you think. And that was kind of a little bit of a revelation, realizing that what we think might happen is not necessarily what would.
Nice.
Yeah. Red, did you have something you wanted to ask?
You guys kind of covered it already, but I do think that, I guess now I'm going to have to read this book, but my thought is that sometimes discontentment is good. And I'm not talking about like anger or hatred, but like, look, I need to do more. I don't know how to explain it exactly.
I think that you'll see that Neal Shusterman has written that quite well in this book, even with that. And I do like there are some consequences to the disease that you see kind of through the side, and then in the later on it's a little bit more talked about. And I don't want to spoil it for Panda or Red or anybody else who's not reading it, but
I don't care about spoilers.
I know you don't, but I'll just talk about there's a scene by a beach with a boat, and that really was like, oh, this is maybe where that contentment and that desire that they have is a little bit of a negative, but at the same time, expertly well written, and to me, and it made me really relate with these people who are, experiencing that. So.
All right. I think I'm sold. Definitely. I've got my copy.
And by the way, this is not just a single book. This is it's going to be a duology. And I've written
Okay.
books with sequels, but I've never written a pair of books that are intentionally that way. So All Over Now is going to be the second book in the duology. And I haven't started it yet. I do know where it's going, but I don't know how it's getting there. The characters will determine how it gets there. But I can't start on it yet because right now I am busy working on the Scythe prequel.
Oh, that's really exciting to me. I love that. I love Scythe. I love the part of Gleaning that I've read. Like that's really exciting to hear.
Yeah, I am deep into it and having a fun time. It just keeps getting bigger. The story just keeps spreading, and
yeah.
So speaking of, the reason why I don't care about spoilers, like you said, you know where it's going and you know where it's going to end, and you're finding out how it gets there, which is why, not like I intentionally spoil myself, but that's what I enjoy. That's why I don't care, is because I want to know how you get there.
Mm-hmm. It's the journey.
It's the journey, yeah.
Nice.
I had a little question, just a mini one. You don't have to go too deep on it if you want, but did you have any big challenges while you were writing this book? How certain characters would act, or kind of how you thought it might spread, or anything like that? Or
well, the biggest challenge always seems to be when secondary characters want to become main characters.
All right, I understand that. Yeah,
because there's some characters that are just so much fun. Dame Haviland is my favorite character. She wanted the book to be all about her, and I really had to rein her in.
I like that.
Is that going to be fodder for the second book?
Oh yeah, no, she's going to be a major player in the second book.
Nice.
She's not going away anytime soon. But but she was just a fun character. She is this, if you remember Downton Abbey, she is basically Dame Grantham. She's this cranky, crotchety, rich aristocrat.
Yeah.
Who wants nothing more than to maintain the world's misery. Until she catches Crown Royale, until she catches the virus, and suddenly she understands what happiness and joy is.
Yeah.
And now has to figure out how to stop what she set in motion.
Yeah.
Got it.
I definitely pictured her like that. Just almost as that same character, just like, oh yeah, that's who she is. So
this is like a superfluous question, but how did you decide what to name the virus?
Oh, it came from the idea. I mean, crown. That's why it's called the corona. And so I thought, well, so it's the mother of all coronaviruses. Crown, and it just sort of came Crown Royale. And then somebody said, oh, that's a brand of liquor.
Yeah. That's what I was thinking.
And then I just said, am I going to get sued? But that one, there's no E at the end of Royal. It's Crown Royal, not Crown Royale.
Okay.
So I was able to do
you're
that.
safe.
You're safe. Good.
I was like, my image was you having a Crown Royale on the rocks. This would make a great virus.
This would make a great virus.
There was a point, I guess, when I was very punchy that I thought of naming the virus Rosie.
Oh, okay.
Because it was the Queen of Corona.
Yeah.
Now that is a reference that you might not get. Did any of you get that reference?
No, I'm sorry.
I was thinking like the posies, like the Black Death, but that's not correct.
No, some of your listeners will get the reference. I hope. I certainly hope.
There should be some.
It's the song Simon and Garfunkel, Me and Julio Down by the Schoolyard.
Oh.
Goodbye to Rosie, Queen of Corona.
Okay.
I'm going to have to go look that up.
Yes.
Yeah, I didn't catch that. Is there anything else you'd like to tell us about your book, or what would you say is our final words to our listening audience?
I would just say, I hope everybody gets a chance to read it and enjoys it, and it brings about discussion, because that's what I love to hear. That it makes people think and discuss. I also want to mention that I'm reachable on. I have a new Substack. And nice. I have been connecting with my readers on Substack in a way that I haven't been able to before on other social media, because social media is so much about algorithms, and it's so hard to actually connect. But for people who've signed up for my Substack, I'm actually, I'm doing an AMA once a month with everybody. And for those who are on the highest tier, the inner circle, I Zoom with them once a month and use ideas that they give me, and we'll put them in the stories. And so it's kind of a fun way of connecting with readers. So I just want to just mention that.
That's awesome.
Perfect. Yeah.
And the books are going to keep on coming as long as I can write them.
That's great to hear.
Awesome.
Yeah, we'll put that link in our little description for you.
And check out All Better Now, out February 4th.
And check it out. It's good. Thanks, Neal, for joining us. It was a pleasure and a joy to have you here and talking about your book and all our Circle of Deviations with questions. For those of you listening, you can join us on the Legendarium Discord server to continue this discussion. Thanks go to Craig of the Legendarium and Horizon Bray for helping start Green Team. The intro and outro music is Galactic Damages by Jingle Punks. I was Cesky, and I was joined by Panda.
Bye.
Little Red.
Good night.
And Neal Shusterman.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody, for listening. We'll talk to you next time.